Every once in a while on social media, I'll see someone repeat the old adage that they likely got from the legacy media that Canada is a fundamentally left wing country politically. That on average, the typical Canadian has center left political sensibilities, and that's why so many liberal governments have been elected over time in Canada. That Canadians like that bigger government vision for the country, they like more benefits, they like more government intervention in the market, they like their public health care, and all that sort of thing. And so many legacy media journalists seem absolutely baffled that Pierre Poilievre is as popular as he is. Pierre Poilievre seems to be a very fundamentalist conservative leader, very orthodox in his views of wanting smaller government, tougher on crime laws, and doesn't actually think that government supplied benefits are the way to actually bring prosperity to the country. And one journalist I want to pick on today, not because I have any personal vendetta against him, I think he just lays out the sort of media's confusion about conservatism very well, is this article by CTV News op-ed writer Don Martin, which it was titled Don Martin, Pierre Poilievre's road to apparent victory will soon start getting rougher, in which he starts it off by saying he may be peaking too soon. I'm going to get back to reading a little bit of that article, but it doesn't even really make sense on its face when you look through Canadian history. And I'm not talking about the founding of the country where we had a conservative government for multiple terms with John A. Macdonald. I'm thinking of just going back to the mayor race with Rob Ford in Toronto. Supposedly, Toronto is the receptacle of all liberalism in Canada, that is where the Liberals get the large portion of their seats in government. Yet, how did we ever get Rob Ford being the mayor of Toronto, the better of the Ford brothers? He was an actual real taxpayer-focused conservative who tried to cut as much spending as he could in the city of Toronto and give back money to taxpayers. And he was wildly popular. He was cutting programs. He was cutting supposed benefits that like Torontonians relied on, and yet people really liked him. And I think it's that the reason why conservatism hasn't been as popular in Canada over time is that Canadians really have never been served up conservatism in its more pure form. It's always been in the form of an Aaron O'Toole or a Doug Ford or a Jason Kenney, where they aren't really free market conservatives. They're just people who effectively run a liberal agenda with a little bit more fiscal responsibility. The efficiency of the programs and the spending is better. They don't create as many new benefit programs. And so they're conservative, but only relative to the liberals are they conservative. And that's why the media seems very sort of confused and befuddled by people like Danielle Smith and Blaine Higgs and Pierre Poilievre. They're more orthodox conservatives or libertarians, but I will criticize Danielle Smith because the budget was not nearly as good as it should have been. She should have cut taxes, but that's another rabbit hole for me to go down on another day. But Pierre Poilievre, because he actually is sharing a small government vision, which the media keeps accusing him of not having a vision for the country, what really they're just fundamentally missing the point that his vision is smaller government and that is actually appealing to Canadians. The media thinks that if you don't come out with a bloated program that you don't have an agenda to push. Like, no, he does. It just requires a lot of cutting to be done because the whole point is that there's too much government. And so getting rid of government is in fact a plan because it actually will have the biggest impact on our problems. The government thinks that, or at least the liberals who like the liberal government think that unless you do like the Canada Prosperity Act in which you give a bunch of money to people, then you haven't done anything. But I want to get to this article by Don Martin because I think his confusion is quite, telling about how many people in the Toronto media bubble think. So he starts off saying, Pierre Poilievre and Conservatives appear to be on a cruise control to a rendezvous with the leader's prime ministerial ambitions. This week's by-election in a riding just east of Toronto featured a Liberal show of force, including campaign visits by the Prime Minister and a parade of cabinet ministers to try to make it a close contest. It ended up being a cakewalk, with 57% of the vote steamrolling to Conservative heavyweight Jamil Jivani over to the hapless Liberal at 22%. Okay, so by-elections are mostly low-turnout referendums on the government's popularity, and this was, after all, a Conservative seat. Yet the historically high-margin victory seems to confirm all the lopsided polls foreshadowing a Poilievre majority in the making. So I do appreciate that Don Martin does understand that this by-election was telling of the Liberals' unpopularity. People are still running around saying, it's a Conservative seat, what do you expect? Well, what we usually expect is the Conservatives get 45, 46, 43% of the vote. They got 57. That's obviously very telling. But Don Martin then goes on to try and cool the jets of Conservatives and basically throw some cold water on the idea that they're going to win an easy majority. And so he says, still, despite this week's Nanos research poll, which pegs Poilievre as the most popular voter choice for prime minister in 10 years, the Conservatives might be passing their best before moment to send the Liberals back to a well-deserved term in official opposition, if not a return to third-party status. Despite chronic Liberal efforts to render themselves unelectable by rolling out gaffe after gaffe over boondoggles galore, while enduring global humanitarian humiliation amid a carnage of fiscal ineptitude, there's a chance that the seemingly inevitable Conservative victory is not yet cast in stone. And this is where I think he just doesn't understand Canadians. He's going to go on to basically say, where are the programs? Well, the Liberals are going to be able to battle back because look at all these programs. And it's just mistaking what Canadians think about stuff. But before I get to that, I just quickly do want to include my shameless plug that I, Wyatt Claypool, am running for the Calgary Signal Hill Conservative Party nomination. So if you live on the left, like the west side of Calgary, you might be in this riding. This is what the riding boundaries are going to look like after redistribution. If you live in that riding, buy a membership and vote for me, or go visit my website in the description below, wyattclaypool.com. We want real Conservatives representing Conservative ridings because, as we've seen with O'Toole, if Conservatives do not act Conservative, they get punished at the ballot box. Anyways, getting back to the article. He says, despite crying, the problem for Poilievre is that he needs an election now to capitalize on his party's strong popularity. Having negotiated a pharmacare package with the tag-along NDP, the Liberals should be able to retain power until the scheduled vote in October 2025. And that's a long time to hold for the Conservatives a commanding lead. So far, it's easy for Poilievre to merely oppose everything, particularly this government where it's a fish, me, and gun in a barrel. But the need to propose a future Conservative course in government is where the rock lies for his breezy sail to victory. While the Liberals have failed to hire judges, buy back, ban firearms for fine medically assisted death, and fallen down in a multitude of other areas where they promise action in delivering foot dragging, they have introduced some popular big ticket programs which will be hard to unwind. And there's basically goes on to basically say, well, they're going to provide all these medical services and different drugs for Canadians through the pharmacare program. And so Don Martin later on the article says repealing a new pharmacare program will be unpopular for women who will soon have free contraceptives. And anyone needing diabetes prescriptions will be hard to scrap free dental care for. Lower income Canadians, subsidized daycare is impossible to take away now. Poilievre can't cut military spending, an underfunded embarrassment on the world stage. Canadians want rectified. Healthcare transfers are untouchable, as are the huge Indigenous reconciliation budgets. The justice system would seem immune from cost cutting given the Conservatives' law and order focus. And while there may be strong support to axe the carbon tax, Canadians still demand efforts to fight climate change, which won't be cheap. Honestly, Canadians are not asking for that. But he keeps going on acting like the Conservatives couldn't possibly find something to cut because he still thinks that Conservatives are the Aaron O'Toole Conservatives who think that government programs, if they have even slight popularity with Canadians, are untouchable. Poilievre has made it very clear that cutting popular programs is totally on the chopping block. Pharmacare is too expensive and it's not going to actually provide that many people with drugs that they couldn't already purchase themselves. Most people already had coverage for pharmaceuticals. And so getting rid of the pharmacare program will probably save more people more people money than it will actually cost people in pharmaceutical costs. It's one of those things where, yes, there's people who are going to like the benefits, but that is the fundamental error in Canadian politics, that just because people like a benefit that the government is giving them does not mean that the taxpayer can afford it. And that's where Don Martin doesn't understand the typical Canadian. I think most Canadians understand the spending is too high, and they are going to probably give a lot of license for the Conservatives to cut spending. The budget since Harper's last term has gone up by 66%. I don't think that many Canadians are going to lose sleep by cutting that down significantly, because they know that they're not benefiting 66% since the budget has gone up. Their service quality has not gotten 66% better. All of the public health care system has not gotten 66% faster. It's been a complete disaster across the country. The Liberals' money, the Liberals' increase in the budget, has mostly just gone to more public employees doing fake jobs that they get paid way too much money for. And most Canadians are not going to be sympathetic with them when they start protesting a Poilievre government for cutting these jobs. Anyways, That should be it for me today. I just wanted to comment on the fact that these people still don't seem to understand that Canadians are not really glamored by the big government sort of vision of the Liberals anymore, and they actually do want to return to some a small government, role in Canadians' lives. Anyways, but you guys can, if you live in my riding, Calgary Signal Hill, buy a Conservative Party membership, visit my website, wyattclaypool.com. And if you don't live in my riding, you can still donate to the campaign through the website, or you can donate to the legal fundraiser for myself, the National Telegraph. We have a billionaire developer suing us for effectively nothing. We reported on things that were already reported about him a year and a half ago by far larger publications, and he is trying to basically bully us into giving a fake apology so he can pretend everyone who's ever said something negative about him is just lying or whatever. But anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. See you later.